I'm Jennifer Fairfield, Chair of the Western Washtenaw Democrats. Thanks for joining us this evening. Tonight's meeting is to introduce you to candidates running for state Senate and state House districts that touch the Western Washtenaw area. Those include state Senate districts 14 and 15 and state House districts 33, 46, 47, and 48. If you are not sure what district you're in, because I know it's very confusing still, you can find in our emails that we've been sending out a link that you can click on to take you to the Secretary of State's website that you can put in your address and it'll tell you what your districts are. Let's see, what else? Just a little bit, we'll be giving each of the candidates who are running in any of those districts time to introduce themselves to you tonight. We'll also, when everybody's done, give you a chance to ask them questions at the end. I'll get into specifics of that in just a moment. To stay up to date on what we're doing in Western Washtenaw, please follow us on our Facebook page. You can also sign up to get our emails from our Facebook page. There's an email sign up spot right there. If you are not on Facebook or for some reason you can't find that information, send me an email, chair@wwdems.org, and I will be happy to get you signed up to receive our emails. Just a reminder, tonight, please do not take anything about tonight's meeting as an endorsement of any of our candidates. We, the Western Washtenaw Dems, do not, or our bylaws don't allow us to endorse any candidate in any primary race, regardless of whether they are in a contested race. Our bylaws do not allow endorsement. So please don't take this meeting to imply or explicitly say that we are endorsing any candidate tonight. Along those lines, I would like to take a moment to address an issue that has come up in the last couple of weeks that has, in the opinion of the Western Washtenaw Democrats, the potential to cause a great deal of distrust and disunion within our party. I'm going to read, well, first, before I read the statement from the board, for those of you who are not entirely aware of the issue that I'm referring to, you may be aware that we have now, because of redistricting, joined in with the Jackson County Dems, or in Jackson County for a number of our districts. So we are working to get people elected to districts that will span both Washtenaw County and Jackson County, and actually up into Livingston County and down into Monroe County and into Lenawee County. So we're going to be having some things in common with lots of different counties in the state that we didn't necessarily share. The concern that we have, that what has occurred, is that the Jackson County Democratic Committee, whose board consists of 4 people, 2 of those board members are candidates in what are known as contested primaries. Those are primaries where more than one Democratic candidate is running, as opposed to a primary where only one Democratic candidate is running. A 3rd member of the Jackson County Dems, or what we will refer to as JCDC, the Jackson County Democratic Committee, is the spouse of one of the candidates. The bylaws of most Michigan Democratic Party groups, including ours, have long not permitted groups to endorse candidates in contested races, in contested primaries. The thought behind that is that doing so can unfairly tip the scales in favor of one candidate over another, rather than allowing the voters to choose the person they want representing them. It can also, we believe, cause unnecessary division within the party. Recently, the JCDC reportedly and apparently changed their bylaws from just such a rule to instead allow themselves to endorse in a contested primary. They then reportedly and apparently voted to endorse the 2 candidates running in these 2 contested primaries. And I say reportedly and apparently because while That is what we have been told. There has not been any evidence of that because their bylaws still that are posted on their website and on the Michigan Democratic Party's website still state that they cannot endorse in a primary. So with that information, I'm going to read to you the statement that the Western Washtenaw Dems board has prepared. We, the board of the Western Washtenaw Democrats, are disappointed and strongly oppose the recent actions taken by the Jackson County Democratic Committee that enabled them to endorse candidates running for election in contested primaries. Their decisions and actions have the potential to cause a divide within the party at a time when we need to work together to ensure that we elect Democratic candidates to every seat in the state. These two seats are, without question, important to our ability to flip the state House and Senate out of Republican control and to give our governor the support she needs to do the important work that must be done in our state. The Western Washtenaw Democratic Club board feels that the actions taken by the JCDC jeopardize that work. Consequently, we call on all of the candidates and the JCDC. In addition, the Western Washtenaw Dems and the Washtenaw County Democratic Party to fully commit to providing their full support to whichever candidates chosen by the voters become our party's nominees for these seats in this year's November general election. That is the end of our statement, and that is the statement of the entire board of the Western Washtenaw Democrats. So we will move on to tonight's candidates. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the Senate, state Senate seats. We're going to take this in numerical order, and within numerical order, we'll do alphabetical order by last name. So starting with the state Senate 14 district, and the candidate who is alphabetically first would be Kelsey Heckwood. So Kelsey, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And I'm sorry, I did say I would get into the details of how we'll do this. So we'll do that. We'll do it in numeric order by the seat and alphabetical order within that if there are more than one candidate. We're going to give the candidates between 5 and 10 minutes to introduce themselves to you. And all of the candidates have gotten this information. But just so you know, they'll have 5 to 10 minutes. They can take as much of that time as they want. If they get to 10 minutes, I'm going to cut them off to let you know who they are, why they're running, and why they think that they are the person you should vote for. After every one of the candidates has had a chance to introduce themselves to you, we will then open it up to questions from the audience. You can use the raise hand at the bottom of your screen. And if you can't find that, wave to me and we will try to catch you on the screen so that we can get you to ask your questions or put a question in the comments if you like. So Kelsey, I am going to hand it over to you and let you take your time.
Sure. It's a tough way for me to start, so thanks. I appreciate that. I'd first, I guess, say I feel like I have to address that initial comment as the person being talked about in that comment, and I'm happy to do that. I would say that as the secretary of the Jackson Dems, I have not received any contact or information from the Western Washtenaw Dems or the Washtenaw Democratic Party about this issue. So I would say that the concerns about trust go both ways in that this is happening without ever being able to have a conversation about it as parties. And instead it's happening in forums where I am being introduced by and to audiences with a lot of preconceived notions. So I guess I will try to introduce myself and see if there's any possible way that that can be taken on the merits. Although it seems clear that that is not going to be what's going to happen. So I was raised in northern Lower Michigan. I was a sick kid. I actually right now have a persistent ear infection as a result of having poor healthcare when I was a child. My family received Medicaid. I went to Head Start. We got food stamps. And then I went to public school. I went to McBain Rural Agricultural School. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. I graduated from Central Michigan University in 2014 with a degree in sociology and absolutely no idea what to do with it. Through a friend, I ended up registering students on Central Michigan University's campus and sort of caught the campaign bug. I worked for a Democratic candidate for office there in 2014, and we lost that seat to current or to, at the time, State Representative Kevin Cotter by about 600 votes. And then I moved down here. I lived in Ypsi for a while, worked as a bartender and a server at a couple of different restaurants around town, and joined Gretchen Driscoll's race. I worked for Gretchen in 2016. In 2016, when Gretchen was trying to run for office, she was from Saline and didn't know anybody in Jackson. Jackson was the largest municipality in the 7th Congressional District and one of the more diverse parts of the 7th Congressional District. And she didn't have any contacts there. So I volunteered to move here. Yes, so I volunteered to move here. When I got to Jackson, it was sort of a blank slate. There wasn't a lot going on. There wasn't a lot of investment downtown. There wasn't a lot of investment in the community, and there wasn't a lot of political activism. One of the big reasons for that is that the city of 33,000 people is pretty democratic. It tends to vote, somewhere between 60 and 70% Dem in every election. The problem is the way that the out county votes tend to come in incredibly red, and the way the districts are drawn, so that none of those 33,000 people, most of whom are Democrats, have the opportunity to elect or be represented by a Democrat. And so, I worked really hard to get involved in the city. I was involved in the non-discrimination ordinance fight, where I came out as bisexual. I served on city council, and we actually in 2021 worked to elect the first African-American mayor of Jackson and the first majority person of color city council. When I came there to Jackson, there was maybe 1 or 2 Democrats on the city board. Now there is only 1 Republican left. So we were able to completely flip what the Jackson City Council does, and that is the idea of what to do with the county now that we have fair maps. So I'll talk a little bit about my work. I in my day job, worked at America Votes for a long time. So if you volunteered with Voters Not Politicians, or Promote the Vote, or League of Conservation Voters, or Planned Parenthood, or ACLU, or a whole bunch of different organizations, I was probably the person who was your volunteer coordinator's point person. So I did data and analytics, I did strategic planning, and that strategic planning included creating the lists of people who we talked to turn out to win in 2018 and 2020. So a lot of experience with how elections work, how demographics shift, the way that we're able to get to majorities. That has been my career. And I was really excited about this opportunity because we had flipped the city of Jackson blue. There's nowhere to go any higher. And this is one of my favorite fun facts. There hasn't been a Democratic state senator from Jackson since 1894. It's been 130 years since a Democrat from Jackson has represented Jackson. And so I thought it was really important that, since this Senate 14 district is made up of 55% Jackson County by population and 52% Jackson County by voters, that there be a Jackson option for folks. And so this to me feels like the one opportunity we have to elect a Democrat from a competitive area to a safe district, so that I would have time to breathe and work and build and not be campaigning for re-election the day I'm sworn in. We currently have Mike Shirkey, so we'll take any improvement that we can get over Mike Shirkey. But this allows Republicans to say that it's just somebody, from Washtenaw. It's just somebody from Ann Arbor. That's not our real representative. They only won because Ann Arbor has so many Dems, not because Jackson could be a place where Democrats come from. And I think particularly in Western Washtenaw, you understand that we cannot keep winning statewide if the only elected Democrats are from Detroit, Ann Arbor, and Grand Rapids. We can't do that. That's not a coalition that can build anything. That's not a coalition that's sustainable. And it lets Republicans make the case that Democrats don't represent regular people or small town people or rural people when we know that's not true. And another major concern that was outlined by the Redistricting Commission, which I know a lot of people on this call were part of those Jackson Washtenaw seats, was that Washtenaw would just smash every Jackson candidate every time, and nobody would ever get a chance to govern if they weren't from Washtenaw County and they ran in one of these seats. And it's a real possibility that if every single one of these seats goes to somebody from Washtenaw, that the Republicans will sue and they might win, or that they'll say this unpacking Ann Arbor into Jackson experiment didn't work. We need to redraw something else in 2031. So I would push back on the idea that Jackson Dems endorsing in this primary is bad for the party or bad for unity. I think it's bad for people who don't want to be represented by somebody who lives in Jackson. And if that is what the voters decide, then that's what the voters decide. But I think that this was a strategic decision to expand Democratic power in places that people don't traditionally think Democrats can live in, and to completely change the region. And I would have been happy to explain that in a call had anybody called me. But nobody did. So now that I've sort of just scorched earth this entire forum, I'll go ahead and stop talking.
Thank you, Kelsey. So up next will be Sue Shink. Sue.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for hosting us tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm Sue Shink, and I am running to represent you in the 14th Senate District in Jackson and Washtenaw Counties. I currently serve you as Washtenaw County Commissioner and as chair of the Board of Commissioners. My commission district includes these townships that are also in the Senate, in the 14th Senate District: Webster, Northfield, Ann Arbor, and Salem, and a little bit of Ann Arbor. It also includes Superior Township, which is not in the new Senate District. I've been spending a lot of time in Jackson and building relationships with people in Jackson to ensure that this representative, if I win the Senate, that I will be representing Washtenaw and Jackson counties in their entirety and representing the interests of all the people within the district. I entered public service because I found that when people need a voice to lift up their concerns, I've been able to do that and continue to work with them to negotiate a solution. I've built a reputation of bringing people together to work together, even people who we didn't necessarily think would be able to find common interests. One example of that is when 20 years ago, when farmland preservation wasn't really a thing, I worked together with people who cared across the county. Out of that synergy, the Greenbelt and Natural Areas Preservation Program were born. And we also have quite a few township millages now where townships are raising their own money to preserve farmland and open space, and the participation of some private land conservancies, including land conservancies that also operate in Jackson County. This has become a national model. And we have preserved over 20,000 acres. Farmers can now use the capital from selling conservation easements to invest in their businesses and buy new land. One example is Lee Malbach from Northfield Township, who used money from selling a conservation easement to buy more land and to invest in high-tech equipment that allows him to pinpoint fertilizer and herbicide use to the square inch. People enjoy the public preserves that have been born out of this, and their use was increased by 2 times during the pandemic, increasing our physical and mental health. Preserving land is a solid climate action strategy. And I know this because I participated in the Governor's Council on Climate Solutions, where people from across the state work together to find doable, achievable climate solutions. I've heard from businesses that have chosen to locate in this county that our extensive network of preserved land is part of the reason that they have located here. I've served on the Parks and Recreation Commission, and we know in Western Washtenaw, that includes Park Linden, Independence Lake, the Border to Border Trail, and Pierce Lake golf courses. These are gems in our county that bring in people from all over. I have also worked, or I continue to work, to remediate contaminated land by serving on the Washtenaw County Brownfield Authority. And some of the projects that we're working on in Washtenaw County include supporting the remediation of the federal screwwork site in Chelsea that may become a park, and the Rockwell building in Chelsea, which is slated to become 51 housing units. As your next state senator, I'm going to work to increase funding for the preservation of land, protection of our vital waterways and groundwater, and further remediation of contaminated sites and their subsequent redevelopment. In addition to my environmental and park work, I've increased job opportunities through my work on Ann Arbor Spark, and have talked extensively with community and business leaders in Jackson and Washtenaw counties to learn how we can work together and support each other's efforts. And I'm pleased to say that there's a lot of excitement around that. I'm also very proud to have led Spark to add sustainability and equity as part of their mission statement. I also serve on Michigan Works Southeast, which supports unemployed residents in Jackson and Washtenaw counties in developing new and meaningful careers. Among some of the accomplishments of which I am most proud is my work to bring broadband internet access to every single home in Washtenaw County. And that was a big group effort too. I have a strong record of bringing people together and working together fruitfully to get results for our residents. And I'm really excited to announce that yesterday, the first high-speed internet connection that is born out of that effort was approved in Freedom Township, and we expect many more to follow. However, in Jackson County and the rest of the state, there are no present plans to increase internet access like that. I heard too many stories of parents having to take their children to a parking lot to do homework in the cold during the pandemic. We have to change that. If elected, I will bring broadband access to Jackson County and the rest of the state. I've also worked to increase access to mental and public health services in rural areas, including Manchester, Chelsea, and Dexter. And I will work for more funding for that and more flexible funding so that families can have what they need. I'm meeting with families from Jackson and Washtenaw counties to understand just what changes they need. And I also look forward, as I can see your picture on here, Representative Felicia Brabec, to working with you when I'm in the state Senate. I've also worked to increase resources to support human services and capacity building in our communities that have been historically underserved. That will serve me well as I serve all of the residents of the 14th Senate District. I've been elected 3 times in a rural 50-50 district in Washtenaw County, which is part of the new Senate District. I've been a township trustee in Northfield Township, where we currently have a fully Republican township board, and I've been elected county commissioner twice. I am sure that I can beat the GOP candidate and contribute to a Democratic Senate majority for the first time in 40 years. I will vigorously represent the residents of Jackson and Washtenaw counties, and I ask for your vote on August 2nd and November 8th. If you want to learn more about me, I invite you to check out my website at www.votesueshink.com. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sue. We do have a third candidate in the Senate District 14 race. I know she was invited, but I do not see her on this call. And we did not receive any response from her to this invitation. So if Val, if you're on here and I'm just missing you, will you please unmute yourself and say hello? Okay. All right. So we will move on to our State Senate District 15. Jeff, if you want to unmute yourself and say hi to everybody.
Hello, and thank you, Western Washtenaw Dems, and you, Jennifer, for hosting and emceeing this event. I am Jeff Irwin. I'm the state senator for the 18th district. And even though I've been involved for a little while, I feel that now that I'm introducing myself to a whole lot of new folks, I should tell you just a little bit about myself. For those of you who don't know, I'm originally from Sault Ste. Marie up in the Upper Peninsula. I ended up going to high school in the Lansing area and came over to Ann Arbor to attend the University of Michigan in 1995. I started studying political science. I thought that the last thing I would do would be get involved in politics, but as a student, I got active. I got active on environmental issues, trying to fight for clean air and clean water. I got active on affordable housing, homelessness issues, and I got active with the College Democrats. And along the way, I found out that one of the issues I was working hard on to build a new homeless shelter was something that was active at the county board, and a seat opened up on the county board. And so I ended up running for office as an undergrad, not really fully appreciating what I was getting myself into. I was an intern for Alma Wheeler Smith at the time and just getting more and more excited about politics. But that opportunity to run for office and serve on the county board, which ultimately ended up being 6 terms, 11 years on the county board, was a tremendous opportunity for me to learn about a whole number of important issues in the community that are near and dear to my heart. But initially, I came to it with a passion for helping people in poverty and for protecting our environment for future generations. So I'm running for office because I want to make sure that we have great schools in every part of our state, in every zip code. I'm running for office because I want to make sure we protect clean air, clean water, and the Great Lakes, and that we fight for clean energy and make sure that Michigan's a leader in the fight against climate change. I want to fight for equality, a state where your rights are respected no matter where you're from or what you look like or who you love. And I want to fight for an economy that is fair for workers. I think you can also look at my work in the state legislature and you can see that protecting people in poverty is a huge mission of mine. Rebuilding our mental health system, making sure that substance abuse treatment is available on demand. These are things that are important to me. Fighting for a more just criminal justice system, protecting a woman's right to choose. These are crucial issues in my office that we're working on in Lansing right now, and I hope to continue working on behalf of the people of the 15th district. And also right now, and I know all of you feel this as fellow Democrats, we're protecting the right to vote in our very democracy. The systems that underpin our system are under attack by irresponsible extremists on the right wing who have taken over the Republican Party. And I want you to know that I take these threats seriously. And we're fighting that in Lansing now, and I expect that fight's going to continue. So I don't want to be presumptuous, but I am the only Democrat running in the primary. So I do presume to be the party's nominee. Hopefully, if I make it to August. And so, what I really want to say, I guess, to the Western Washtenaw Dems today is that what I need from you is I need your help in understanding how I can do a better job in representing Western Washtenaw, how I can do a better job communicating with the communities in Western Washtenaw, and also how I can help you. How I can help you, with me being in certain places, with my team showing up at events, with me and my team helping with doors and dollars. And so, please look at me as a resource and a partner in the fight for a better world and a better Michigan, and know that I really appreciate what you're doing. I've been to several Western Washtenaw Dem events over the years. I've watched some of the amazing activism that your organization has done. I've watched it with appreciation, and I know that there is a whole mountain of work that's happened with the Western Washtenaw Dems that I haven't seen. So I want to thank you heartily for that. And I know I said it already, but I want to close by saying that our democracy is under assault. And this election is going to be absolutely crucial in our effort to protect America from the violent right-wing extremists who are trying to take over our government. And, as fellow Democrats, I think we need to stand up for these issues we care about. We need to make it a clear pitch to our fellow voters that when Republicans say that making sure we have universal health care is too expensive, that we say no. We actually have the most expensive healthcare system in the world that isn't doing right by our people. We have the most expensive system with some of the most mediocre results. When Republicans say that gas prices are too high, we're going to say, yes, you're absolutely right. And not only are we going to fight to bring those prices down for consumers, we're going to fight to unshackle our citizens from these oil companies that are greedily gouging us and robbing us. So, these are the kinds of things that you can expect to hear me say over the course of the next several months. And I'm eager to be in as many places as I can with Western Washtenaw Dems to speak out on behalf of our democracy and to make sure I keep both ears open to what it is you have to tell me and what it is you can inform me of to help me understand what are some of the issues maybe I'm not seeing in Western Washtenaw, or what are some of the places and spaces where I need to make sure I'm raising the flag for our good democratic values. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. And I'm just going to throw my 2 cents in here. I'm really thrilled that I am actually finally going to have a Democratic state senator representing me. I live in Bridgewater Township and have always had, unfortunately, a Republican, or at least for as long as I can remember. So Jeff, I'm looking forward to you representing me.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm looking forward to it too. And I've already been out in Manchester and Lenawee, down in Tecumseh and Clinton, and we're going to keep working it. Thank you.
Terrific. So we are going to move on to our state house seats, and I'm going to have our candidate running for the 33rd state house seat go first. And I'm going to start by saying I'm also thrilled, Felicia, that you will be representing me in the state house this time.
Yay! Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with all, and I thought I might be like Jeff too in the car. I was racing home from Lansing, but I am Felicia Brabec. I currently get to serve along with Senator Irwin, and I get to represent the 55th district right now in the House. And the 55th district right now includes parts of Ann Arbor, Pittsfield, York, Augusta townships, and the Washtenaw portion of Milan. And now I am running in the 33rd district and hoping to be able to represent the good folks there. Let me explain kind of what the 33rd looks like. So in Ann Arbor, it's basically the bottom third to half of Ann Arbor, and then all of Lodi Township, Saline City, parts of Pittsfield Township, and then one precinct in several townships: Scioto, Ann Arbor, York, and lucky me, Bridgewater, and being able to be Jennifer's rep. So some of you, as we know, the lines have changed. And right now, Washtenaw County is represented by 4 different members in the House. With the newly drawn lines, Washtenaw County now will be represented in some way by 7 members. So that's a big, big difference. The interesting thing is that out of the 4 who currently serve, I am the only one, again, if elected, would be the only one returning. So I'm hoping to be able to return to continue the service for all of our folks here in Washtenaw, but also be able to build bridges with the increasing size of our delegation. So hoping to be able to do that. Now, before serving in the House of Representatives, I was fortunate enough, much like Senator Irwin, to serve as a county commissioner. And I got to do that for 9 years here in Washtenaw County. And so I came to the House with that kind of local government perspective, which I felt not only proud of, but it really helped in terms of the transition to working on issues at the state. And I really focused on 3 major things while being a state rep and serving folks here. And those are constituent services and being responsive to our residents here in the district and statewide, policy and appropriations. The policy issues that I focus on are several of them that Senator Irwin were talking about, but also particularly mental health care, environmental issues, reasonable gun legislation, criminal justice reform, and educational policy. And again, I've been able to partner on several of those with Senator Irwin in terms of really trying to push the needle. It can be very challenging when you're in the minority to get those things over the finish line. But I am glad to have a partner in Senator Irwin in doing that. I'm also a member of the Appropriations Committee. So we really focus on the budget. And I get to serve as the minority vice chair for Health and Human Services and that subcommittee. And so basically that means that I'm the Democratic lead for that budget. And it's the largest state budget that we get to work on, around $33 billion. So it's a lot of resources that we get to be at the table around and advocating for our communities, both in terms of physical and mental health. And I also see environmental justice as part of that work as well. And so I feel very honored to be doing that work. And I really love being able to be deeply entrenched in those budget discussions and the budget process, but also actively work on all of those policy ideas that we have, and to, again, get some of those over the finish line. During the past year and a half, the other thing that I was really proud to do was I was proud to lead our Democratic Caucus's mental health care tour, where I got to travel the state both physically and virtually to meet mental health care leaders and experts, inclusive of families and clients. And our conversations really focused around what are we doing well with our mental health care system, particularly the public system, and then what can we do to improve it? And from all those conversations, I am working with one of our Republican colleagues on a major rehaul of our system that would directly impact our residents and increase access for all. One of the things that we're doing right now, and in Washtenaw County, we have been awarded the status of having what's called a CCBHC, so a Certified Community Behavioral Health Center. And that basically means that no matter what, anyone can walk through this front door, no matter your insurance type, no matter what kind of mental health care issue you are working on, whether it's mild to severe, you will receive help. That is not the case now because of the mental health code. And so that really creates a front door for folks to be able to get more service. And right now we know mental health care access and access to that service is one of our major issues that residents are really trying to cope with and deal with. So I am really excited and proud about that work. What brings me to that work is my almost 30 years past experience. I am a social worker. I have my master's degree in clinical social work, and I have my doctorate in clinical psychology. And out of the 110 state reps, I'm the only mental health care practitioner. I keep encouraging more mental health care folks, to go into this profession because the perspective that we bring is so different, and the framework through which we view policy, those voices are needed. And so I'm really excited and proud to do this work, and we'll continue to champion all those issues. So we know that being in the minority is really challenging and difficult, and all of us are actively trying to change that and have been for years. But I did want to let folks know that even under those circumstances, several of the bills that I've been able to be a part of have actually gotten hearings. In fact, just last week, our team testified on an additional mental health care bill in the Senate that would allow for more access for folks to be able to see psychologists. And it's already passed out of the House. And I was actually really proud that during my first year, I was able to get a bill across the finish line. It's been signed by the governor, and it literally saves Michiganders' lives. And what that bill does is it brings Michigan into alignment with what the federal government does in terms of the HOPE Act, which says that if someone who is HIV positive wants to donate their organs to another individual who is HIV positive here in Michigan, they can do that. Before, what was happening is that those organs, those life-saving organs, were being sent out of state. And so now we have impacted Michiganders and their families and are saving lives. So I'm very excited about that. So I'm hoping to be able to work with and serve the folks in the new 33rd. And I can't wait to continue to meet people and be out, like Senator Irwin said, be out talking with folks, really learning about the newer issues that I would, if I get to represent you, get to really be entrenched in. And my learning curve, I'm sure will be steep, but I am up to the challenge and want to be able to do that. And so we'll be leaning on folks to really offer me that education. And so I'm looking forward to, seeing old friends. So I see some of whom I see on here and meeting new friends and being out there. And I'm looking forward to earning your support and your vote. And I will pop into the chat and put our website so that folks can go there to see that. And again, to all the Western Washtenaw Dems, thanks so much for having me here tonight. I really am grateful to spend the time with all of you.
Thanks, Felicia. All right, so next we are going to move on to House District 46, and we have one candidate running in that district, and that candidate is Maurice Imhoff. Maurice, if you want to unmute yourself, and there you are. Say hello to everybody.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I also want to make really clear, I also agree with Kelsey. I wasn't really happy with the beginning of this meeting and that comment. It was talked about not having the party divide within, and I think that definitely was, helps create that divide within our own party. So I was not in favor of that. But I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Maurice Imhoff. I am running for the 46th State House District. If you don't know the district, this district encompasses the city of Jackson, Blackman, Summit, and then goes along 94 a couple miles north and south and ends at the city of Chelsea, where it takes that. So it connects right into Washtenaw, which is really nice. More about me, I'm a recent graduate of high school. Really enjoyed getting involved there. My big piece is I love history. I'm a nonprofit leader. I am the president of two nonprofits, the Jackson Civil War Muster, and I'm also the founding president of the Jackson County, Michigan Historical Society. I did an internship for the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History as their youngest intern last year, working on an African-American collective of curators, and also did 2 internships working at the Michigan State Capitol building where I studied battle flags. Under the policy side, I was appointed as the youngest commissioner for the city of Jackson, serving on the Human Relations Commission and the Historic District Commission. I worked on several campaigns here in town and really got a love for working with people, getting to hear their concerns and put those into action. So going to serve on the HRC, I immediately got to that in representing young people. In 2020, we saw young people across the entire country stand up, get involved, and get their voices heard. And I think that's something we can continue to do here in this area. With that, one of my biggest piece was the Civilian Police Oversight Commission that we put together and was ultimately passed by City Council here in Jackson, relating to some of the issues that we saw in Minnesota. So we wanted to be one step ahead here, and we made sure that we did by putting together this commission, which was really nice. My biggest pieces are education, healthcare, and infrastructure. I think that we as a state can help support Biden's Build Back Better program. I think that we need to pass legislation and put the dollars for advocating to get those dollars to help rebuild our state. Our state's infrastructure is crumbling. Studying history, I have seen it, in its prime through the photos, especially here in Jackson, and now seeing it deteriorate is very, very sad. So being able to advocate to help rebuild our state is key. So I think Shink mentioned access to broadband. That's something I'm a strong supporter of. I think that is a big piece. I didn't really look at that as infrastructure until last year, realizing that how that it does tie into our state's infrastructure and is a key issue. Luckily, I have access to broadband here, but I've traveled where people don't have that here in Michigan. And I think it's something that people need all across the state going forward. And so we should be one step ahead of the game here. The other piece is education. Being a recent graduate out of the high school, out of the system, and now going to Jackson College for history, I think I can be a strong asset to the issues that the education system is facing. I've had the chance to sit with superintendents and school board members recently, hear their concerns, issues that they're facing in the schools. My other piece is healthcare. My mom is disabled. She went through a very deep surgery and spent 2 to 3 months in the hospital. So seeing what she went through and how that affected me, and she's on disability and is receiving that. So seeing how important that plays, in her life, and the care of our nurses. I recently had the chance to talk with the Michigan Nurses Association, and that was a very, very productive conversation. And it made me think about how how they need to be treated equally and correctly, have their proper care, because I've seen when, the nurses are having rough days or overworked, how that then can affect, my mother's healthcare, because that transfers down. So I definitely can understand those issues directly. But I really look forward to getting involved here in the Washtenaw area. I'm not totally familiar with it totally. So I'm connecting quite a bit. I've had the chance to get to know everyone through social media, even before running. I never had imagined running for office anytime soon. I went through Every Town for Gun Network's Demand a Seat program just last year, not imagining that I'd run for office anytime soon, maybe 15, 20 years later, but having the opportunity come up now, I wanted to follow up on and definitely take that chance to serve the community. And it's been a great pleasure to get started. I'm hoping to bring some new, fresh, young energy into the State House. As we know, there are decisions being made that will affect my generation and others to come for many, many years, including my kids and their kids. So I think we need to be a part of that conversation. And that's something that I've advocated for, even on a local level here in Jackson, that we need to have the young people be a part of these conversations. So I'm super excited to be here and get to meet all of you, and looking forward to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks so much, Maurice. So next we're going to go to the 47th. Sorry, I'm trying to stop my timer for Maurice so I can start it again for James. So James Johnson Jr. is one of our candidates for the 47th House District. James, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, hello, everyone. I am James Johnson Jr., and I'm also from Royal Jackson. Who I am. I currently work for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I've been with them 22 years. I started as an apprentice. I became a journeyman in 2005, became a foreman in 2011, and an agent in 2015. Extracurricular activities, I serve on 5 different commissions for the city of Jackson. I serve on the Jackson Housing Commission, where we are actively trying to basically give new birth to some of the subsidized housing units there. We're trying to tear down one of the complexes, hopefully going to tear down another neighborhood as well. That's key to my heart, because growing up as a kid, I grew up in subsidized housing. So I know how it feels to live in subsidized housing, and I like to make it a dignified spot. I believe that it doesn't matter how much you make, you should still be able to live with dignity and be able to afford where you live and live comfortably. So that's big to my heart. I also sit on the Human Relations Commission. We handle all of the LGBTQ community complaints and people of color complaints. To this day, we've done some darn good work for the city of Jackson and protect the rights of many people in the city of Jackson. I'm on the Planning Commission as well, the MLK Corridor Rebuild Commission, and the Construction Appeals Commission. In addition to that, I also vice chair the United Way Board for the city of Jackson, Lansing, Battle Creek, and Kalamazoo. We are now the South Central United Way. Some of my experience, I've been working campaigns since roughly 2016. I've been a part of, helping Gretchen get elected, helping Senator Peters get reelected, helping Joe Biden get elected. I also worked Gretchen Driscoll's campaign as well. The last election cycle, I was the regional field director for the Michigan AFL-CIO, in charge of all the phone banks and the door knocking canvases for all of Washtenaw County. So if you got a knock at your door or your phone rung last election cycle, I was the man behind that program. I'm usually a behind the scenes guy. That's who I am. When they came to me, asked me to run for this seat, I was floored. I told them I couldn't give my answer. It took me 3 days of no sleeping. And finally I said, if not me, then who? I believe far too long, working people have not had a voice at the table. And it's time for working people to have a voice at the table. I want to represent working people. I've been a working person all my life. There's issues that's key to us that's been ignored for years, and it's time for them to listen to us. Some of the things that are important to me are basically supporting all rights for all people, LGBTQ community, people of color, everybody in the entire district deserves a voice, no matter who or what or why or any of that. So I'm big on that. Infrastructure, everything from K through 12 schooling to green energy. I'm an electrician by trade, so of course going solar is big on my agenda. I think there's a further conversation we need to have with battery storage and how we can make this solar more affordable and equitable for all people. That's huge to me. Because I live in the rural area of the county, rural broadband is important. What COVID did teach us was me living in the rural area, the maximum broadband strength I have is 3 MPS. So trying to work from home or do anything extracurricular with the internet, it just didn't work out. So that's something that me and all my neighbors share. And there's many people across the district that have that issue as well. Another thing that's important to me is reinstating prevailing wage to help working people get the wages they deserve, and to also repeal right to work. There's many other things that are dear to my heart, but these right here, I think affect the most people in the district, and I want to be the voice for them. How we can do it. Right now, we have the opportunity to take back, to gain the majority in the House of Representatives. If we can work together and come together and unify as Democrats, we can get this majority that we need to go forward. Far too long, we've let infighting, egos, whatever it may be, divide us. And Republicans have been playing chess with us. It's time for us to unite, win these seats, give Gretchen Whitmer the help she needs to get what she needs to get done. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to serve the public. I'm not here to, be a part of anybody's clique or anything like that. I'm here for the citizens. I want to work for working people. And if you vote for me, I will do just that. I believe I'm the right candidate because I live in a rural area. I've been working in Ann Arbor most of my life. I've been a part of building buildings such as Mott's Children's Hospital. Spent 2.5 years building that. CVC, spent 2 years building that. My last project out in the field was West Quad. We remodeled that for the students there. But we need to unite the rural with the city. The rural needs the broadband from the city, and the city needs the solar to go in some of the rural areas, right? I know a lot of the farmers I've talked to, they don't want all of their farmland being taken up with solar. So when I talk to them, I say, maybe in the city, we can get more solar on top of the houses, buildings, parking structures, etc., so we wouldn't have to use up so much farmland for solar. But solar is here, the electric car is here, and we have to prepare for that. And these are conversations that we all have to come together and agree on so we can move forward as human beings. So that's a little snapshot of who I am, what I do, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, James. So next, also running for the 47th House District is Carrie Rheingans. Carrie, if you'll unmute yourself and.
Great, thank you so much. My name is Carrie Rheingans, and I am a Democratic candidate for the new 47th House District, which covers Western Ann Arbor, Scioto Township, goes down into Manchester, into rural Southeast Jackson County, and includes the villages of Grass Lake, Brooklyn, Napoleon, and part of Summit Township, but not the actual city of Jackson. I am running to bring more public health expertise to the legislature, and I really want to enable conditions for healthy people, healthy families, and healthy communities. I grew up in a small town called Linden, Michigan, and we had, a main street with 2-story buildings back in the day when people used to live above their, stores on Main Street, and we had a mill and a gazebo. I've actually officiated weddings at my gazebo in my hometown. I officiate weddings for fun on the side. And so I feel really at home actually when I visit Grass Lake and Brooklyn and Manchester and Dexter. And actually my great grandpa Rheingans was the Presbyterian minister in Brooklyn about 100 years ago, just under 100 years ago. And they spoke German there actually until World War II, of course. So my grandpa grew up speaking German at the house, and I was a German major in college in part because of that family history. And so my grandpa actually asked me to say the Lord's Prayer at his funeral in German. So it was a it was a good way to major. So I grew up in that small town, and we were a working family, and my parents had some issues with each other, and my mom had multiple mental health and substance use disorders. And that really affected my home life growing up. And my parents ended up divorcing when I was pretty young. And it was a violent situation in our home that I witnessed and protected my younger sister from. And as I was growing up, I was really trying to figure out, how can this richest country, the best country in the world, really fail my mom this way? I was noticing it from a young age, and I was, looking around trying to figure out, how can I help my mom? I was 8, 9, 10. That's not what an 8 or 9 or 10-year-old should be thinking of. So that really charted my path toward looking at systems and trying to figure out, how do we help people who really need help? So as I grew up, I was a nerdy kid that liked science. And, I was told girls aren't supposed to like science, but I didn't care because I thought Jurassic Park was a cool book before it was a movie. And I was really confused why somebody would want to make dinosaurs instead of like food that could have all these nutrients in it. So I wanted to be a genetic engineer. So I went to college. I went to University of Michigan here in Ann Arbor. And I wanted to be a genetic engineer, and I started working in a lab, and it was not for me. At the same time, I was meeting people from all over the world with different backgrounds and really getting involved in social justice issues on campus. And I learned about this virus called the human immunodeficiency virus in an immunology class. And that, when I saw how the virus attacks a person's body, and it can really have an impact on a whole neighborhood, a family neighborhood in certain parts of the world, I realized it was because all these systems were targeting people who were the most oppressed because of their race, because of their gender. And I thought it was completely unfair. So watching all these systems fail my mom, watching all these systems attack people in the LGBT community, people in countries around the world, and oppressed groups here in the United States, I thought that, that's really what I need to do. So I stopped being a German major. I started taking Spanish as a social justice action, because I knew if I was going to go into the health field, German wasn't really going to get me there, but Spanish, it sure put me in touch with a lot more community-based work and opportunities. So I actually, in college, started volunteering for the local HIV organization. And for a while, I was the only Spanish-speaking HIV test counselor in Washtenaw County. And it was a very interesting learning experience. But during that time, I got to interview a few folks in Spanish. And when President Obama started trying to make a national HIV and AIDS strategy, he was looking to have testimony from all over the country. And I was affiliated with the national activist group at the time, and they asked me to organize the one in Michigan. So we had over 100 people provide testimony and suggestions for a national HIV strategy. And a lot of those suggestions ended up getting in there. But I didn't provide my own testimony. I interviewed people in Spanish who didn't want to go and be in public. And they didn't think anybody there would listen to them speaking Spanish. And so I interviewed them, and then I delivered their testimony in Spanish for them. And that's the way I look at policy making. You have to talk to the people who are most affected.
Thank you.
You have to look at the people who are most affected.
Excuse me, Carrie, if someone else is not muted, would you please mute yourself?
Hosts are usually able to mute. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. So the way I make policy is by talking to people who are most affected, and try to use what they tell me they want to see in how we roll things out. So since I graduated from undergrad and I went to graduate school for public health and social work, I now have worked in the field of HIV and AIDS and health policy for 20 years, considering all of those experiences. And now I am a contractor at the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and I work on behavioral health policy. Things like the Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinic program that's rolling out across the state and really expanding access. I'm helping the state roll out our opioid strategy. And I know the administrative side of our budget, the MDHHS budget, is the single largest budget area in our state budget. And so I'll be able to walk in on the first day knowing that most complicated part of our budget, and all the acronyms and things and block grants. So it really is a way for me to be able to work on the goal of achieving healthy people, healthy families, and healthy communities. Every policy issue to me is a health issue. So many things affect how healthy we are. And if we aren't healthy, we can't do what we want. We can't be with our family. We don't have a healthy economy if we don't have healthy workers. So we really need to have our people being healthy, our families being healthy, and our communities being healthy. And so for me, that means that we need to look at the systems, and they were already crumbling in so many ways before the pandemic. And with the pandemic, things got completely torn asunder, ripped apart, and crumbled completely. And now we are at a great opportunity to connect the dots and build things back up and make the systems really work for all of us. You know, my mom actually ended up dying from her health conditions just 3 months before my daughter was born. So she knew I was pregnant. She was very excited, but she never got to meet her granddaughter. And my 5-year-old daughter hears stories about her grandma, and she knows that there are ways that we can help people with different health conditions if we are able to get the systems to work right. So in order for me to bring this experience to Lansing as a mother, a health policy expert, an organizer who's done community-based work for years, I need your help. I need folks to vote for me on August 2nd or before by mail. You know, you should feel secure in your vote because I'm the only candidate who has been endorsed by pro-choice organizations. I'm the only candidate in our race that's been designated a gun sense candidate by Moms Demand Action. And I have over 20 LGBT community leaders supporting me publicly in this race because they know I'll fight for them and for policy positions in Lansing that will help the community. I'm also the only candidate that has been endorsed by multiple people who've actually done this job. I mean, serving as a state rep is hard, takes a lot of work to get there, and it's a lot of work to stay there. And they know I can do this job, and that's why they're supporting me. So I'm hoping that you can vote for healthy people, healthy families, and healthy communities on or before August 2nd. And I thank you again for inviting us here tonight. This is really exciting to see the chance to bring together Jackson and Washtenaw counties and really learn from each other. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. So our final candidate tonight for the 48th House District is Jennifer Conlin. Jennifer, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. I will just say I lost my internet for a moment 2 seconds ago and had to rejoin the meeting. So hopefully I will make it through this. Yeah, everyone, I'm very happy to be here. My name is Jennifer Conlin. I grew up here in Ann Arbor. I attended the University of Michigan and then went to graduate school at Northwestern University for a degree in journalism. I then went on to have what has been a 30-year career as a journalist, writing for a number of publications. I met my husband at the University of Michigan, who is also a journalist, and our careers together took us actually abroad for 20 years, living in Europe and finally in the Middle East. We returned here to Michigan 12 years ago and moved into a multi-generational family with my parents. We actually had to leave Egypt. It was about to be the Arab Spring, and we had 3 children, and we were living there. And it had become the moment when it wasn't safe to stay there anymore. So we came back here. My parents kindly took us in. And since then, we have lived in a multi-generational family. My father sadly passed away a couple of years ago. My mother, 88, is still living with us. And the 3 children are now grown, which is good. So they're not here as well. But my older brother also lives with us. So it's a unique living situation. I then started writing mostly about Detroit for the New York Times once we returned, and also was awarded a National Endowment for the Arts Knight Foundation grant to start a citizen journalism project in Detroit that also finally expanded. You know, we obviously were trying to cover diverse communities and give voice to those communities. So we covered Hamtramck and also Dearborn, and then it did expand into Washtenaw County as well. But during those years, I also was just covering every story you can imagine in Michigan and all over the state: tourism, arts and culture, economic development, healthcare, education. And then I worked for 6 years at the University of Michigan in communications, covering the university. So basically higher education. So then I decided a year and a half ago to return to working full-time, as a freelance journalist and mostly for the New York Times, and telling all the stories I loved, again, personal stories of Michiganders, interviewing dairy farmers and restaurateurs and physicians during COVID, and just any number of people you can imagine in all industries. And it was going great. And then on November 30th, the New York Times called and said they needed me to get as quickly as possible to Oxford, Michigan. And I had been waiting that call. I had seen the news that there was a school shooting, and they called, and I rushed up there, and I found an entire town just traumatized by gun violence. And I covered that story for 2 days, and I drove back after the second night, after attending the, candlelight vigil in the children's park. And I thought, I don't want to be writing these stories anymore. I just want to do something about this. And it was about a month later that I found out I was in this new district, and that they didn't have anyone to run in this new district. And there were people who thought maybe I was the person to run in this new district. And I had never thought of running for office because as a journalist, it's a huge pivot to make. And it's verboten, really, to change what you're doing. But I felt so strongly about where things were going in our democracy, and that democracy was on the ballot, and concerned about reproductive rights and voting rights and LGBTQ rights, as I have a daughter who is gay. And I just thought, I can't sit back and not do something here. And I also care so much about my community and my district, and why I'm good to run in this district, which is one of the 4 seats we need to win back in order to flip the House. And it's one of the harder ones. It's 52% Democrats and it's 48% Republicans. But as a journalist, I know how to really listen to people. I know how to hear different perspectives. I know how to dig deep into issues, and I know how to amplify voices. And literally going around and now door knocking, I'm talking to people who really are not on the same side as all of us on everything. And I'm finding ways to get through to them, and we're finding ways to agree. And these gun holders, and, in Livingston, let me tell you my district, because I didn't tell you that. This is the District 48 that goes the northwest part of Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County. I have the southern part of Whitmore Lake. I go up Livingston County to Genoa Township, and west in Jackson to Waterloo. And talking to these voters in the more conservative or red parts of the district, there is a lot of common ground I'm finding when we talk about gun safety, which I care about, and when we talk about conservation, which is very bipartisan. This district has so many lakes and so many parks, and I'm finding a way that is a way to have really great discourse with people who don't necessarily agree. And I really think, and I'm determined, for all the reasons that we all know we care about, to win this district. I also, my mother lives with me. She's on prescription drugs that go up every single year. I have 3 kids with student loans they struggle to pay. And so on the national front, I think we all know what we care about, particularly voting rights. But I also care about, I want to represent everyone in this district. I feel like there are people, some of my more conservative farmers who, one, need internet, and I know a lot of other people have discussed this. We have big infrastructure and flooding issues in this district, and we also have an opioid addiction problem in this district. There needs to be more healthcare facilities. Whitmore Lake is working on that now. They are about to get one. They're in the process of getting one, which is great because they haven't had one. And so I care so much about these local issues, but I care about the national issues. And I also feel like the Republicans I might represent have been getting disinformation and aren't even voting in the way they should to benefit themselves. So that is me. I do not have a primary, and I am looking forward to the general election and winning this so that we win back the House for the first time since 2010. Thank you. And thank you for having us here tonight.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So that concludes all of our candidate statements. We are going to open this up to questions, and we had someone who raised their hand very early in the process, so I promised her that I would take her first. So I'm gonna let Teresa Reed ask her question, but before you do, Teresa, just to remind everybody, if you would like to ask a question, you can use the raise your hand, and if you can't find it, down at the bottom, click on under reactions, and there should be a raise hand. It kind of depends on what version you're on, where you might find it, but if you can't find it, just sort of wave and we'll try to keep an eye out for you, or put a comment in the questions, and we are happy to read your question for you or to open it up for you to ask your question. So Teresa, with that, why don't you go ahead and ask yours?
Great, thanks, Jennifer. This is just for Kelsey. I know you feel aggrieved about the statement from the Western Washtenaw Dems and some concern about the Jackson County Committee's decision to endorse. And you said that, you know, you hadn't had it, nobody talked to you about it, or to the Jackson County Committee's leadership. And I'm just trying to figure out when that might have happened, that somebody might have talked with you about it. I know what the first we knew about it, it was already done. So I'm curious about, like, when would someone have discussed that decision with the Jackson County leadership?
I think before either of the forums where I was asked questions about it, without anyone having contacted anyone from the Dems leadership.
So private conversations after the fact? I mean, after the fact, after the materials have been printed and so forth, private conversations. I mean, I don't think we knew about it until it was in print and flyers and so forth. So I'm just trying to figure out, back after the your husband appeared at in this forum in April, talking about the new districts and the implications of the new districts. And it was really a great presentation. And immediately I reached out to Connor. I talked to Jennifer and said, you know, I'd love to have him come and present this at the Washtenaw County PD's meeting the next month. And I thought, you know, we need to be working together and get our PDs to know each other. And we need to make sure that these seats are in Democratic hands. So let's start to collaborate. And I reached out to him a couple of times that night and then a couple of weeks later and got no response whatsoever. No sense that this was happening within the Jackson County party committee, whatever. So I'm just like, it feels peremptory and not really collegial. So I'm just wondering when we might have had a
Sure.
conversation.
I would say you can talk to my husband because we're different people, and I am here as a candidate for state senate, and yet somehow the only thing I have been able to talk about in any of the time is this. So that doesn't feel super collegial to me either. But I think one of the questions that we have is that we didn't just endorse in the competitive primary elections. We endorsed in local county commission races in Jackson, and we endorsed in the two primaries that are not contested, the 46th and 48th. And we did that because we have never had an opportunity to have any sort of say in what Democratic power looks like in Jackson. And this feels very much like our first chance. And honestly, the response that we have received sort of proves the point that this is probably our only chance to do this. And also that the way that things work in Jackson is different than the way that things work in Washtenaw, and that might be fine, that might be okay, and that might actually be good for how we grow our party, because it means that we can support, like on those flyers that you're talking about, county commission candidates so that they can get elected, so that when someone comes and says, who on earth is going to run for this seat, we have literally anyone with any elected experience who is able to do that. So those are some of the reasons. If anybody would like to talk to me about my campaign or why I think I would be a good state senator, I would be happy to answer those questions as well.
Teresa, we're gonna move on.
Yeah.
I see a question from Christina. Would you like to ask that, or would you like me to read it for you? Christina? Okay. Oh, all right. I'm going to read Christina's question for her. She says, my question relates to how each candidate plans to engage all voters they represent, regardless of party, if elected. Let's try. Oh, I'm going to just sort of throw it out there. How about James?
Hello. What I plan to do is work across the aisle. I have experience doing that in the city of Jackson. We've passed bipartisan ordinances to help working people in the city of Jackson. And it wasn't easy, but we got it done. There's people that we didn't have the same values and we didn't have the same opinion. But at the end of the day, we agreed upon that and it helped serve the citizens of Jackson. So I have no problem working across the aisle with my daytime job. I talk to Republican candidates all the time, Democratic candidates. And at the end of the day, sometimes our candidate does not win. So you got to know how to reach across the aisle. Okay, I understand we backed this guy, he didn't win, but what kind of relationship can we have going forward? And I'm committed to doing that and I have experience doing that. So I don't think that's a problem for me.
Thank you. I'm going to also, since we have two people running in that district that I just asked James to answer, I'm going to let Carrie have a chance to also answer that question.
Thank you. And I think Christina might want to ask all the candidates. I don't know if you want to call us all. I come from a small town and most of my family's Republicans. So I talk to Republicans a lot. And I talk to folks from small towns and villages a lot. And so it is comfortable for me. And I like having good one-on-one conversations with folks. It would be great to be able to get connected with especially key community leaders. An organizing model would be to meet with church leaders and other local elected leaders in the townships, in the various parts of the community, a lot of which are Republicans. And to sit down and talk about what's really important, because they do know their community, and then really try to meet with folks that are more on the ground trying to get through everyday life. And that would be my way to meet with folks and hear what's going on. And, mental health issues don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. So there's a lot of issues that we need to work on together in the 47th district, which, as you can see this map, is pretty big and has a lot of folks in it.
Thank you. Any of the other candidates like to answer the question? Sue, I see your hand.
Sure, thank you. I have a pretty long track record of working with Republicans. When I first ran for public office in 2004, I ran on a bipartisan slate. And what we did was we figured out what are our core values. And we, really, people agree on more than they disagree. I think there are some very important things that we disagree on, and I'm not willing to compromise those, like civil rights or gun safety. I think people are coming around too. But I think it's important to remember that people are people wherever we go. And so I have been talking to my rural neighbors, and I will now call my neighbors in Jackson too. I think everybody who knows me knows that everybody I know is pretty much my neighbor. But seriously, I went to the International Speedway a couple of weeks ago. I talked to Republicans and Democrats there, and I've been meeting with people across Jackson and Washtenaw County. I've got to focus on the primary, but I'm definitely meeting a lot of Republicans and talking with them. And of course, from having served some very purple townships, I know and have worked with many of the elected officials, Republican and Democrat there. So long track record of working across the aisle. I will continue to do so. What I won't do ever is to compromise our core democratic values. Thank you.
Kelsey, would you like an opportunity to answer that question?
Yeah. So when I served on city council, I sat next to the chair of the county Republican Party. So we had some pretty interesting conversations. One in 2018, when the marijuana legalization bill was passed, I went to Craig and I said, hey, I know you didn't vote for this. I know you don't agree with this, but it is legal and we need to set up a framework because 80% of the people in our city voted for this. So it's clear that the people want this. He's a lawyer, he has a legal mind. Like, let's set this up in a way that makes sense, that makes businesses successful, and makes it so that we can actually partake in some of the tax revenue that happens as a result of this. And we worked together and we passed that 4-3. Like, we passed basically everything while I was on Jackson City Council. And the chair of the Jackson County Republican Party joined with the 3 most progressive members on council to pass that ordinance, and passed it against some of the Democratic colleagues on city council who were really concerned about drug use in their communities. And so I think the most important thing is to remember that everyone is coming at this from a different place. And what you really need to do is decide where you want to try to make the most impact, and then just find the people who are willing to give 5 or 10%, and understand that you're probably not going to get everything that you want, but if you get half of what you want, that's a lot better than getting nothing. And that's the sort of attitude that I use to approach working with anyone. I mean, I think it's pretty clear from this forum that I'm not afraid of having difficult conversations, or of really addressing things head on, or of fighting for like hell for the things that I believe in and the people that I care about, which would include every single person in the 14th district if I'm elected to serve as your state senator.
Thanks, Kelsey. Any of our other candidates want to chime in? I see a comment from Christina in our chat. I'm sorry, from Felicia to Christina's question in our chat. Felicia, I don't know if you want to expand on that, or I'm happy to read it for you if everybody isn't seeing your chat. And I'm not seeing you, Felicia, for some reason. Okay, so Felicia's comment says, throughout all the time I've been able to serve residents in Washtenaw County, I've had conversations with folks of many political perspectives. I intend to, oh, there she is. Hey, Felicia, I'm going to let you take that.
I'm so sorry.
You are now in the car.
I now am in the car onto the next thing. So I'm so sorry, as our lives are. Absolutely. But I did want to just put out there that this is the work that we get to do all of the time. We get to have these conversations. We get to do this work. We get to hear the perspectives from, folks all who are our neighbors all around us. And then that gets to inform the work that we get to go do for our residents. And some of the great reforms that I've gotten to work on I'm thinking about right now, this is going to be coming out of the Health Transportation Committee, is a package of bills that would allow folks who are returning citizens, so coming from our prison system, to leave and return to our communities with a driver's license or a state ID. That is a bipartisan package. So working with my Republican colleagues. And so what I do is, think about the Venn diagram, and there are going to certainly be things, as folks have mentioned, that we do not agree on, that are not part of our core values, that are never compromised. But there are so many times and ways and places that we can find that work to work on. And I know that Carrie mentioned it. Mental health care is one of those big ones. Criminal justice reform is another one. And so there are spaces and places where we can do that work. And so that's what I'm just going to continue to do and look forward to that.
Thanks, Felicia. Anybody else want to take that on, or we have any additional questions?
Look, everybody else gave a great answer, but I will just add that one of the things that we have an opportunity to do in the role. So for instance, something that I have an opportunity to do now, and I see folks like Representative Brabec doing an excellent job of this, is just to communicate clearly about our democratic values, and being able to do that now in an area that includes Lenawee and Southwestern Washtenaw, I think is going to be really powerful, because we can now have, not just, us showing up at personal events in the community, but also coffee hours where people can be invited to come in and voice their concerns, mail that goes from our offices to the district explaining what we're doing. The Republicans get a lot of mileage in rural America by caricaturizing Democrats as if we are advocating for a set of things that we're not actually advocating for. And so, we're able to send that mail, have that social media presence, and have that physical presence in the community that says, we're working on issues like making sure that mental health care is better in your community, which is a huge concern in rural America. We're trying to make sure that seniors have the support to be able to age in place and live with dignity. And that's a problem in a lot of these communities as well. And so, I think our biggest tool is listening, but I also think that we have an opportunity to just communicate our democratic values in the mail, social media, and in person.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions for our candidates? I'm not seeing any hands. You guys must have done a really great job of getting your comments across. Oh, Brian, I see a hand.
Yeah, my question, I guess, is for James. I'm not clear what you made. You made a statement in your introduction about how much you'd done in terms of telephone and door knocking in the county, in Washtenaw County. I'm sure you were working with union organizations to do that. Are you aware of how much the county party in Washtenaw did in the last cycle?
Hello, Brian. First off, I just want to state that was no shot at the county party or anything like that.
No,
That was just
I didn't take it that way. I just wanted to know whether you were aware of the level of organization that we did last cycle. It's pretty unusual. So I didn't know whether you had awareness of it.
Again, there's no shots at you guys. I'm just making a point of, the stuff that I've done in the community that I will continue to do to elect Democratic candidates. It's what I do. Actually, last election cycle also, I hosted, Kamala Harris's husband come to Ann Arbor. It's just, part of my civic engagement. Again, I'm not trying to throw any shade at anyone. I'm just stating things on my resume. So I hope I didn't come across that.
No, you didn't. I didn't take it as you throwing shade. I'd just like to let you know that in the last cycle, we did just short of 230,000 voter contacts, including distributing about 7,000 voter guides, doing hang tags, 142,000 text messages. We were the only county party, I think, in the last cycle that the state party actually cut separate lists for us to do that kind of work and set us up on those systems so that we could do that both on our own behalf and in combination with the one campaign. So I'm just saying that we did a lot here. We're hoping to do that for the candidate that wins in this primary. I'm not saying anything bad about what you're saying at all. I'm just saying that there's a vast amount of interest and resources here that can serve the common good between us. So I just want to let you know that's there.
And I really appreciate all the hard work that everyone did for that, because together, essentially, that's how we win. We're not going to win much divided. We have to pull it together and use all resources to fight the Republicans, because they're coming. Right now, gas is $5 to $6 a gallon. We have stats on 2016 and 2020. There's like 80, 90,000 people in the district. If more of these Republicans wake up than Democrats, we might be in trouble. So all these races are going to be a dogfight, and we have to pull it together to win this.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, I am going to jump in and use your comments about the voter guide to make a plug for everybody. We will be doing voter guides for not just Washtenaw County, but the other counties that touch any of the districts in Washtenaw County. We're going to be working with the other county parties to produce those voter guides to really work to make sure that we get our candidates, whoever they are, after August 2nd elected, because we need Democrats in these seats. We need to give our governor as much help as we possibly can, and that is only going to happen if we get Democrats elected. So if you are not familiar with the voter guide, where have you been? No, our voter guide is a way to bring awareness to voters in the districts of all of the candidates who are running in Democratic elections during the general election in November. For the candidates on this call tonight, you should be receiving soon some communication asking you for information that will be included in the voter guide should you be the candidate running in November. There will also be a process for endorsement following the August 2nd election. The endorsement within Washtenaw County will be a coordinated endorsement process for all of the Washtenaw County Democratic Party groups. So we will not be endorsing separately. We will be endorsing as one group in Washtenaw County, and you will be receiving information on that process. And I believe we've got a questionnaire that will be coming out for our candidates shortly. So keep an eye out for that. So any other questions? Carrie, are you raising your hand, or is your daughter raising her hand for you?
My daughter apparently has a question.
Ah, okay. And what is your daughter's name?
Adam.
Hi. So what is your question?
My question is that maybe we can make a program to help kids.
I think you're right.
Can you be more specific? Like what kind of program to help kids?
Like some grannies are gonna be here in a program that's blue and white and red.
Oh, red, white, and blue program. Sounds good.
Okay, we will take a look at that.
Thank you for asking a question. I don't know if any other candidate wants to comment on that, but but hey, James, you should know she was born in Mott Hospital where you helped build it. So thank you.
You are welcome.
I do see a comment here from Kelsey to Autumn, something about seeing some cool bugs today.
Do you remember Miss Kelsey? Let me show you her picture.
Hi, Kelsey.
There she is right there. She's waving at you.
Okay. All right. So I think that I don't see any other questions from anybody. I do see some things in the chat. Yes, Jeff, I do agree that blaming Biden for gas prices is insane. I think we all know that. We just need to find a way to get that message to some of the others out there. So there are some comments in the chat if people want to take a second to read those over if you're interested.
I see a couple questions.
Oh, sure.
It looks like Brian and Vince were waving.
Oh, I'm sorry, Vince. I didn't see you there.
No, I was just trying to get your attention to let you know that Brian had a question.
Oh.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, my question is again more on that coordination between Jackson and Washtenaw counties. And I know that there have been some comments in the chat that it feels like Kelsey has been taking a lot of the heat for those choices that the Jackson County Dems made. You know, that's also James. I can speak for myself, and maybe that will carry some of the clarity. When you have two of the candidates serving on a 4-member board and the board votes to change their bylaws so they can endorse in the primary. I heard the explanation for why you think that was important, but there was no outreach to us at that point in time. There wasn't a conversation about it. And there wasn't also, you know, every other county party that we know of doesn't endorse in the primaries for just those reasons. So I agree that we could have potentially communicated with you before coming to the forum and saying we were going to make a statement about that. We also don't feel like you communicated with us about how you were going to change the rules on groups that we were dealing with in common, on candidate districts that we have in common. So that's just my feeling about it. I do apologize for the fact that we didn't put that out in front of you before coming in, and you feel like perhaps you've been ambushed to a certain extent. But it's also, you know, one of those things we've got to work together on and have better communication across the board.
Yeah, I'll jump in here and say one of the first things I did when I decided to run was reach out to the chair of the Washtenaw County Dems, who told me that he was going to be supporting Sue. And I said, okay, great. And then I reached out to the Western Washtenaw Dems, and Jen said, we don't endorse. And I said, okay, cool. And then I'd also like to be super clear that this was not a decision that the board made. This was a decision that we had to change bylaws. To do a bylaws change, you have to inform your membership 14 days in advance of the meeting with the bylaws change, and we did that. And then at the meeting, this meeting happened in March. It was a full membership meeting. The vote was unanimous. And then in April, we put forward a slate of candidates, including county commission, 3 county commission seats, 1, 2, 3, 4 state house seats, and the state senate seat. And that was also unanimously approved by the full membership. As a person who serves on the Jackson County Dems, I don't think that the Western Washtenaw Dems or Washtenaw Dems have any requirement to inform me about what you're putting on your membership, what you're putting in front of your membership. I guess maybe that is a difference of opinion. But I think that if your members vote for something, then that's what your members want. And that is like fair game.
Okay, rather than continue, and I do see there have been some comments about, I think people are in agreement that we've beaten this subject up quite a bit. So I'd like to not keep putting people on the hot seat on this, and move on to other things, or at least maybe if we have no other questions that aren't about that, I'll give everybody one last chance for questions on a different topic. And if we don't have any, if I'm Carrie,
could we
yes.
maybe share, like, have each candidate share ideas about how we might build some bridges?
That's not a bad idea. Why don't you start?
I have a special assistant here who loves making friends, and so do I. So I think, you know, some ideas that I have about building bridges are that, maybe I want to be able to be seen. Thank you so much. Okay. So I think we really do have a lot to learn from each other in both counties, because there's different kinds of cultures in each county, and I've seen it happen. I used to work at the HIV organization called Unified, and they opened an office in Jackson when I worked there, and we really spent a lot of time meeting with folks. I need you to use a quiet voice, baby. We really spent a lot of time meeting folks in the community and community leaders, and I really think that especially in these contested primaries, it'll be a really great thing for whoever doesn't come out the winner in the primary to help introduce the primary winner to all their partners and colleagues that have been supporting us throughout the campaign. And I think that could be a good start to help building some bridges.
You're like going to the Amazon.
Thank you, Carrie. Any of the other candidates want to talk about that? I am not seeing any hands, though I've missed hands in the past, so. Okay, All right, I think we had said we would be done by 9 o'clock, so it's just about quarter of. I'm impressed that we got this done before our stated time. That doesn't usually happen. So thank you everyone for joining us. I really appreciate the candidates joining us tonight and taking the time to introduce themselves to everyone, and to all of our attendees for taking the time to hear from our candidates. Thanks everybody, and have a great night.